back to Green Island. Spring has finally sprung, although it's not very warm today. But you can see in this lovely area near the water garden, the carpet of greenery here in the shade of the trees. And today I'm going to share with you one of my favourite plants for growing in shade. And this is the Epimedium. Epimedium, or barrenwort it's known as, because the rhizomes are thought to make young girls barren. Fairy wings, bishop's hats, or horny goatweed. It has loads of different nicknames, if you like, but I just know them as Epimediums. As I say, they're one of my favourite plants. And you might be forgiven for not really noticing they're here amongst all the other stars of the spring show. But they are one of the most versatile plants. They make wonderful ground cover. They spread by these rhizomes across the ground, most of them. Some of them are clump formers, but most of the ones available in the UK and Europe are spreaders by rhizomes. This is one of the most reliable varieties that you will find. Epimedium ex versicolor sulphureum. Sulphureum because of the yellow coloured flowers. These lovely flowers, you can see why they get their names. Fairy wings, bishop's hats they look like. Some of the flowers have much longer petals. I'll get Steph to come in and do a close-up later on. Some of the petals are very horned, but usually the flowers are held about this height above the foliage before it starts growing up. The foliage is what I really love most about these plants though. You can see the new leaves here have come in these beautiful marbled, mottled colours. And they develop to a green colour through the year, and then a lot of them will actually colour bronze and red through the autumn. Many of them are evergreen, so you've got 12 months of interest with them. Some varieties will do a repeat flowering, but this one is a hardy, reliable, really good doer. Excellent plant, and people are often asking me what they should grow in dry shade, and you honestly can't beat Epimediums. This is another variety which is a real stalwart. It's definitely evergreen. It's Epimedium ex Paralchium Frondeleten, it's called. And the flowers similar to the versicolor sulphureum, but they are slightly more mustard yellow. The leaves you can see here are just so beautifully coloured, and that's because it's growing in the sunshine here. They will do really well in dry shade where not much else will grow, but give them a little bit of moisture and they can actually become quite rampant, some of the varieties. This one in particular I would say is the most vigorous variety. It's a total weed suppressant. You won't get the weeds coming up in between it. So if you've got an area of dry shade under the trees and you don't know what else to do with it, then Epimediums are definitely a good choice. This is another readily available, really good doer. Epimedium Warliense it's called, and it has these gorgeous coppery orange flowers. Leaves margined in this beautiful copper shade. We're coming to the end of the flowering season now of most of these Epimediums, and the flowers tend to come up first and then the new foliage. So we've now got the last of the flowers along with the fresh new foliage, which is beautiful. But there is a danger if you don't cut back the evergreen leaves that you would have the flowers masked by the evergreen leaves and the new leaves coming up. So we tend to maintain these Epimediums by literally taking the shears to them, or the strimmer in case of really big swathes that we have of it, usually about February, before the new buds start emerging. It's very tempting to think they still look beautiful, and often they do because they're so beautifully coloured. But if you leave them there and the new foliage and the flowers comes up in between them, it is impossible to separate them out later in the year when we come to this stage. So much better just to be ruthless in February and go and cut everything back to the ground. This is a sweet little plant, Epimedium cantabrigiense. It was found in a Cambridge college, actually in the garden at St John's College in 1952. Hence the name, but it has these lovely buff pinky coloured flowers with the yellow centres, but another really good doer, easy to plant and easy reliable plant for dry shade. This is another one of my real favourites, Epimedium rubrum, and it gets its name from these lovely deep claret red flowers with the cream inside. Really pretty flowers. It will spread quite satisfactorily if it has enough moisture, but in a really dry spot it will just remain as small little clumps. So a really well behaved plant, but gorgeous, gorgeous foliage markings again. So Epimedium pubigerum. This is another excellent one for shade. You can see it just combines beautifully with the deep burgundy foliage of the acers. And typical, as a lot of these varieties do come from Japan and Asia. This one, pubigerum, holds its flowers well above the foliage, so in that respect it's very good. The flowers really are quite tiny but very dainty. Flowers a little bit later than some of the other varieties. So this is a hybrid of Epimedium warliense. It's called Orange Queen, and you can see why. These lovely orange flowers. Beautiful marbled foliage again. And this one, it's easy just to demonstrate here to show you how this actually spreads by these rhizomes across the surface of the soil. And they just hold the moisture in. Very easy just to split a piece off, just cut it with a pair of snips or even snap it off like that. And then pop that into a pot or move it around and spread the clump that way. It's very, very easy. We'll just pop that back in there and make a new plant. So most of the varieties we've looked at so far have been readily available in Europe and the UK for many, many years. They tolerate most types of soil. They grow in dry shade, so they're really tolerant and resistant and tough, fully hardy, and they spread by rhizomes, so they will give a really good coverage of the soil, even on their own or by lifting and splitting them, which I demonstrated was very easy to do. There is another group of epimediums, though, that have been available for quite some time from Japan. These have slightly smaller leaves, smaller flowers. They're smaller plants, and they tend to be more clump formers. So we've got Epimedium youngianum and Epimedium grandiflorum. There's lots and lots of hybrids of those as well, but they are more fussy about the soil they're in. They are lime haters, so they will need an acidic soil. So if you haven't got those, and you do fancy growing some of those, we'll show you lots of those in a moment, then you're probably going to have to grow them in pots. But that's not a bad thing. I've always loved epimediums, and my eyes were really opened last year when I went to visit the National Collection of Epimediums in Roger Hammond's garden in Brentwood. And I was taken by these wonderful displays he had in this tiny little TARDIS of a back garden, with hundreds and hundreds of different varieties, all growing in pots. And they were up on stands, so you would walk around and you could see the foliage and touch it and admire the beauty of the flowers actually at eye level. And it got me to thinking, because most of these flowers we've demonstrated today, we've had to go down to the ground in order to appreciate their beauty. So I've started growing some in pots and collecting them as well, and that's probably a bit dangerous with me, because you'll be gathering what a bit of a hoarder and a collector I am. So Epimediums is the latest one. So I will show you some more of those now. In recent years, there's a huge amount of new varieties of Epimediums that have come flooding onto the market. People breeding them, and also a lot of new varieties discovered mostly in China. These varieties are excellent for any shaded position, but they do need a little bit more moisture and a little bit more mollycoddling than the traditional varieties that we looked at at the beginning of the video that are all growing freely in our gardens. This is a lovely one that I think is absolutely superb. Pink champagne, Epimedium pink champagne, and it does just look like a pink bottle of fizz. You can just see the cork popping off it and these beautiful flowers exploding out. The foliage has more of a dotted speckled appearance, but again lovely leaves, foliage that persists right through the year, fully evergreen, but really pretty flowers. And once it gets going, it will reliably flower several times, so you get a long period of flowering on this one, but really beautiful long spurred flowers. So this is an example of Epimedium grandiflorum hybrid. This is Epimedium grandiflorum ubi. Now, it does also go by several other names, which makes it very, very confusing. It's also sold under the name Epimedium Red Beauty, Red Queen, Crimson Beauty, Crimson Queen, or Rose Queen, and also Epimedium roseum. So I may end up with more than one of this plant, but under different names. But it is nevertheless a really, really lovely plant. Beautiful, small. You'll see the leaves are much smaller on this variety. And the other thing you'll notice about the flowers is that these petals are they have long horns to them. Often the horns are multicoloured, often with a different colour at the tip, but this particular one is this lovely purpley rose colour. The makeup of the flowers, I'm not sure if you can see, is that they have sepals above the petals, usually 4 of those at the top, these sepals, and then the petals are these ones with these long spurs or horns, and then often they go down to a different colour in the centre of the flower. But they're really, really beautiful, the makeup of them. This is another lovely grandiflorum hybrid, Waterfall it's called. And look at these gorgeous flowers, the multicoloured purple with the white. Beautiful contrast, lovely shaped leaves with lovely colouring again. And then this is a really sweet one here we've got. This one's called Lila Fee, or Lilac Fairy is its translation. But very pretty flowers, held well above the foliage there again. And then another one of my favourites here is Marchant's Twin Set, another grandiflorum hybrid, with these pretty flowers again held above the foliage. These ones do need a little bit more mollycoddling, a bit more moisture, and maybe a bit more of a rich soil. So best planted in either in a container, a pot, or in a good garden soil. This is another lovely hybrid, Epimedium exversicolor cupreum. So the flowers, instead of like on sulphureum, where they're yellow and cream, we've got this lovely coppery orangey colour on the back of the flowers with the yellow centres. I've grown these in pots and they're very easy they tolerate being dried out, perfect for this north-facing porch here. But the only thing you do have to watch out for with growing epimediums in pots is the dreaded vine weevil. They will happily munch through a rootstock and destroy it in a matter of days. And often you don't know the damage has been done until you go to clear away the leaves and they come away and there's nothing left in the pot. And then you tip out the compost and you might find 10, 20 or even 30 of the horrible little white grubs in there. The way we get round that is by treating with nematodes. So no pesticides, but we put on the nematodes as soon as the weather warms up in the spring, and we'll treat them twice a year. So in the spring, sort of about this time of year, and then we'll do them again in September. Other than that, really, really maintenance free. A lot of the new cultivars, it recommends to not necessarily cut them down in the way that I described we deal with our big clumps growing in the beds. And I'd certainly agree with that maybe for the first year or two when you've only got a few stems. But I do tend to cut them back. I think it shows off the foliage much better, the new foliage, and you can see the flowers so much better without all the old leaves confusing the picture, as you like. So this is a slightly different variety here. This is called Epimedium Spine Tingler. And look at this huge elongated serrated edge leaves, really, really unusual. And then these sprays of delicate lemony yellow flowers held well above the foliage. Makes really handsome plant. Just to finish off, a couple of my latest acquisitions. This one is beautiful, Epimedium Domino it's called. Look at these gorgeous, gorgeous flowers. So pretty and delicate, just waving in the wind. And then this one here we've got is Persian Carpet. Lovely two-toned flowers, lovely long spurred flowers again with the purple centres. And look at the foliage, what a contrast with the colour. And you can see here, this is last year's leaves. Really quite evergreen, they've remained quite leathery, and I could come and just snip those off. It's very simple to do that now. And then leave it for all these new leaves to emerge. So why not have a look into getting some Epimediums for your garden. They really are one of the most fantastic, easy plants. They cover a difficult area in dry shade, maintenance free, and they are such a delight in the spring. If, like me, you get completely hooked on them and start collecting, then I would recommend growing in pots. They're easily available from several online nurseries. We do supply several from our nursery here, but otherwise I would recommend Stadden Farm Nurseries, Penny's Primulas it's called. She has an excellent range and a national collection of Epimediums, amongst other things as well. Another good one is Edrom Nurseries, but I do find that they are nearly always out of stock of all the varieties that I want, but you can go on a waiting list. So it's a bit like the snowdrops. Watch this space and watch the collection grow. But once again, thanks very much for watching our video. Please remember to like and subscribe, and see you next time.